All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure some other people will be joining as we move on. But thank you today for coming to the virtual DC Tug. We're going to be doing lightning talks, and the theme is going to be Tableau Plus. So it's going to be applications or tools that can be used in conjunction with Tableau. So a couple of announcements before we start. I have our next user group already scheduled. It looks like that one's probably going to end up being virtual as well. We're going to go back to Zoom for that one because we're going to be doing breakout rooms again. So we did this meeting format last year one time, and we're going to be doing Viz makeovers. So we'll break up into small groups, and then we'll have some Vizes that are either volunteered. So if you look at that last line, I'm looking for volunteers to share their Vizes if you'd like feedback on them. So we'll be breaking into those small groups. We'll go through some of the visualizations, and we'll be talking about, what's good about them, what's bad, things that we might want to change. And then depending on your facilitator or how your group is going, you might actually walk through how some of those changes can be made. So this is already open now. You can register for it, and you'll be taken to a Zoom registration. All right, so this is for our Tug Fair. I'm still going to ask for volunteers for it. I don't really know how the schedule is going to play out for this because I don't know if we'll be able to do it in person then. I guess we'll just have to play it by ear. But either way, I'm still going to take volunteers to present. So you can go to this web address down here, this bit.ly, if you want to volunteer. And then I'll take a look at, what your topic is. If you haven't been to one of our tug fairs before, this one I would say almost has to be in person, which is why I'm not sure how it's going to play out. But around the room, we have different people set up. It's like a play on a science fair. People will have monitors and they'll be showing their projects, and you can walk around and just do a little bit of a show and tell. If you haven't seen this already, the DC Tug is on Twitter. You can follow us at dctug.com or dctug, sorry. We'll be posting stuff about meetings, job postings, events in the DC area, and then just general announcements.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Whoops. Siri's trying to talk. All right. So usually I do announcements. I believe that you can unmute yourself if you have an announcement. Although I think it's going to be a little harder to do announcements. Usually this is like job announcements or other meetups that are happening.
If they wanted to raise their hand, I can unmute them.
Okay.
Or drop it in the chat.
Okay. So if you have an announcement, feel free to drop it in the chat. We can always swing back around to that at the end if there are some. All right, so as we said, we're going to have quick lightning talks. They're going to be about 15 minutes long. I told them that they can go over, so it'll be about 15 minutes of presentation and then 5 minutes for questions. If you have questions, there's a Q&A area, or you can put them in the chat. I'll try to jot down the questions, and then we can circle around to them when they're done with their presentations. These are our wonderful presenters who have volunteered. You can find them on Twitter, and then this is what they're going to be talking about. So I am going to swing it over to Ben, who's going to get us started. All right.
Okay, perfect. Let's get this rolling. Brittany, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. And let me get this participants list out there. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Young, and that is, like I said, me. There is my wife and my kids. All 5 of us are hanging out at home, doing our best to make sure that we're still friends and we still like each other after this. I hope that everyone's doing as well as possible, given the very interesting times that we live in. And so I won't take too much time, but again, just hope everybody's well with that. My name's Ben Young, though. I'm a solutions lead with Interworks. We're a full stack BI consultancy. Been working with Tableau for the past 12 years and a lot of other part of the year with them and part of the year with other tools around the Tableau kind of infrastructure that we work with. So we work very closely with Snowflake. We work very closely with Matillion, with Alteryx, with all the tools necessary to help people get in touch with their data. And we've got a great website, lots of tips and tricks out there everybody's free to go to, but didn't come here today to necessarily advertise about Interworks. Wanted instead to just talk about the ability to use Tableau Plus, in our case, portals is what we call it, but let's think of this more extensively as Tableau Plus embedded, right? How can we take this Tableau server experience that we're looking at and make it something that's more useful and more powerful for your end users? So if I don't know about a lot of people on the call. If we were in person, we would have had a little Q&A here, but I don't know how many people are pure desktop developers only. But for me, when I first transitioned to starting to publish things up to server or to online, I'll use server, but it can mean Tableau server, Tableau online, whatever you want. The process was actually a little bit scary because with desktop, it's really easy to know what you're looking at and to show to people. You can invite people over to your desk, and it's great. You don't have to worry about them going and finding anything. Now, Tableau Server in and of itself that we're looking at right here is really a great tool for organizing your content. Right, so if you come in and you explore your content that's available, you have top-level projects, you have projects inside of that, you have workbooks, you have views, data sources that we can work on. You can even go through data roles if you want. The thing is, it's built from a very good kind of governance structure, I think is what I would say. It's very nice to be able to know, okay, this is an HR dashboard. We only want HR to be able to access this, so let's lock everything down and put it here. Inside of these projects, you can now have nested projects, so it can work great. The problem is, if I'm an end user and I come in here and I say, okay, explore, that's great. Maybe I know that I want some sort of view underneath here. As soon as I hit view, then all of a sudden I'm overwhelmed with this list. And there's some mess in here, like a dashboard 1 that didn't get renamed nicely. We can put this as a grid if we want, and we can start seeing pictures. But this quickly starts being something that, as a user, is a little bit of an overwhelming experience. And so at Interworks, we found it is a very helpful thing to put one more layer on top of Tableau Server, kind of a presentation or a visualization layer that we refer to as portals, but you can think of it as embedded analytics. And so as an example, this is a demo that we have up live, just demo2.portals.interworks.com. Most of these are live that you can go look at afterwards. But this is Interburger. For us, this is a fictional burger chain. We haven't launched it quite yet. We'll see what happens in the future. But the idea is you want to be able to come in and look at your Tableau dashboards and consume them in a way that makes sense. Consume them in a way that's easy for your end user to be able to go through and find what information they want. So on the one hand, the first thing you'll notice here is that we've moved from this Tableau server, kind of Tableau branding and Tableau sessions expiring, to be able to go through to your Interburger branding. So what you started immediately is you move from kind of Tableau experience to a branded experience. For people who are sharing external content, this is really important. What message do you want to send? In this case, we have our brand colors. You saw our brand logo that was moving in there as a custom animation that we had easily uploaded. And then you see kind of that brand and that recognizable experience across our view. On top of that, you also see front and center some nice visualizations, right? These are all Tableau dashboards that are driving these behind things. You have your familiar interactivity that you're looking at. If you click on something, then you'll see it drill in and load up. But beyond that, you actually have the ability to have a different sort of experience. So if we go to our KPI sales, you can see we now have it in a hover over menu. Again, our branding follows us through, but you get the ability to interact with your dashboards in a different way. So as a desktop user, as someone who comes in and looks at this, you'll first notice, hey, we should probably resize this to make sure that it works appropriately. But as the desktop user who uses Tableau, you're very familiar with what the interactions are. This additional layer on top of things on inside of a portal, gives you the ability to go in and look at a slightly different user experience to make it so that as people are logging in and looking at what's available, they can see these different dashboards. and then hopefully you get things to load appropriately. Right. Inside of that, another nice thing about these portals is that they're extensible to where you can go through and you can have mixed content. So you're no longer limited to just Tableau dashboards, but if you wanted to have some sort of style guide, you could load that up, and this is just a PDF that's uploaded and it's part of it. Now, along with that branding, you have the ability to do more with your visualizations. So we've got our Acme U analytics that are in here, and we have the ability to drill in. And again, we've got that same menu structure we were looking at. You can tell that the bones are kind of the same here, right? But as we're going through, we can see different dashboards that are available. But we have the ability to come in and favorite different icons. If I click on it, we can go in and start looking at our classroom level view. You can surface custom items, right? So Tableau Server gives you the ability to customize your dashboards in some ways. It gives you the ability to customize branding, put some different marks in there. But when we're in an embedded environment, when we're in that presentation layer on top of server, we can simplify and extend what's available. So in this case, this is a simple tutorial that's available for you to use. So if we're looking at the dashboard, it gives us a brief description of how to do this. It shows users where to select. It shows users where to filter. Because if we're going to be honest, if we look at the spread of users across an organization, probably 5% are your creators, maybe 15 are your explorers, and then the remaining 80 are going to be your viewers, people who've never used Tableau before who just want to get at their data. So something like this tutorial can be really helpful so that when they close this and look at it, they can go, oh yeah, great, I can click and now see English. Or I can come in and I can click and see what my math scores are. And then there was that tutorial right here. It's surfaced as a custom icon. It said, oh yeah, there's a filter here. So rather than using a valuable dashboard space, we can come to the side where we've popped out our filters. And you have the ability to go in and look up a specific student. And don't worry, this is all dummy data, right? So we don't have to worry about seeing things that we're not supposed to, and we get locked down. Now, an important note on that, this filter list is populated based off of the dashboards that are on Tableau Server. I've described portals as a way of being a presentation layer. These portals and kind of this embedded experience follow and inherit all of your permissions from Tableau Server. So you don't have to worry about setting up security on Tableau Server and then coming in and duplicating that security effort here. Everything is built in and automatically follows on. Now, to illustrate that a little bit more, if we look up here, we have the kind of buttons that we're used to when we're looking at Tableau Server. We have the ability to go full screen. We can reset our filters. We can export a PDF, export an image. We can export our data as a CSV. But then we have a few more things that we have available, right? So we can email a subscription, but it's put in a little bit nicer of a simplified view. I can just say, great, this is exactly what I want. Give this to me weekday mornings, and I can add my subscription. I can enter into web edit if needed. I can also come in and export things as a presentation. So in this case, we have a report builder. This isn't the best way to use interactive dashboards, but to build on, to drive that adoption, you need people to have ways to start interacting with it. So you can capture your slide as it is, and you can build out a whole deck of these slides. And after you've captured that, notice it's reloading to get the most recent data. You then have a presentation that's here that you can export as a PDF or a PowerPoint. Right, and I can go to different, if I went to different dashboards, so let's go over and look at our student profile. That report builder functionality is still here. We can capture a second screenshot, and then we've got the ability to snapshot different elements. And again, it's snapshotting it in the current state that you've set up. So if you have filter selections that are through there, it will highlight those. So you can build a story, and then again, export as a PDF if you want. You may be sitting here saying, okay, those look great, but if I wanted something that looks like just a boring bar at the top, that's nice, I want to do something more. These portals are very extensible. You can think of them as a platform to build off of that. So here's another demo that we have up. Very simple, very kind of streamlined experience, build out that kind of modern web UI to where you can come in and you can search for your dashboards. And it's going to bring up dashboards that are there on server. The whole goal here is to make this experience as simple for your users and as powerful for them as possible. So there's a mixed content page we now have access to, right? As you scroll down, it will load different elements, different dashboards that are identified with the text that you have along the side. All of these are available out of the box, and they're available for non-developers too, which is probably my favorite part, because I am a Tableau developer and a SQL developer. I am not a web developer. So this right here is my little portal. Again, you can see that it's got our menus at the top. It's got our drop downs like we have. But what if I wanted to do things like reorganize this menu or drop it to the side or change its colors and maybe try out a different style completely? The back end of the portals is built to be as user-friendly as possible to make it so that you can come in and do things simply, right? So if I wanted to move my airport performance, let's drop that up under my geos. Again, espousing that kind of Tableau, not mystique, but Tableau best practice to where it's as simple as possible. You click and you drag around. Now as I reorder, as I refresh, sorry, it will inherit that change that I've made, and it's here underneath my geos. I could come in and I could say on this portal, hey, that was great, but I really want this to be a different style, right? Or if I want this to have a different homepage type. So rather than the dashboard tile, let's make something a little bit more customized. Let's try a masonry layout for our homepage. If I refresh this now, I'll have my menu still across the top, but I have a different user experience that's been provided. All of this without me having to know any web coding or anything like that. Now, if we wanted to get into that, of course, you have the ability to come in and put in your custom coding. You have the ability to embed things like Google Analytics, or you can drop in your own CSS. Right? The idea is you want to be able to make this as easy as possible and as intuitive as possible for your end user to be able to come in. Now, on that note, you have the same thing when adding dashboards. So right now we have this bank of dashboards that are available. You can see that we've got our 11 or so that we're looking at. If we go back here, we know that we had more workbooks than that. It's going to sign out on me a bunch. We had 7 different workbooks that we could work with. You see we have more on here because it's also referencing some Tableau Public. But if I want to go in, it's as simple as adding a new dashboard. And then you go in and you can choose which site you're on that you have access to. You can choose which project you want to grab something from, and then what workbooks you have available. Then as you're dropping it in, you can choose which dashboard inside of that workbook you'd like. So this is just going to be our product dashboard. And then if we create that, bring it in, it will now be available for us to use inside of our portal. Right, so what we've done with this is try to make this extensible experience as easy as possible, right? Because it is possible to go through and do these. All we're doing here is we're leveraging the JavaScript API to do some front-end, nice and easy interactions back and forth. That's what gives you things like these buttons up at the top rather than having to use menus. It's what gives us this filter. We've also used the REST API to connect directly with your Tableau environment to make sure that we're inheriting your Tableau server settings. It integrates with SAML, it integrates with SSO. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to build out this extensible experience, right? And so that's where I'm going to stop for now. And really kind of, because I want to return to those principles, regardless of whether you use an InterWorks portal or not, embedding your analytics, putting that visualization layer on top of Tableau Server can make things easier for your end users. So when you look at Tableau Plus portals or Tableau Plus, an external facing website, your goal is to communicate your brand, make it easy for your users to find content, and make it really easy for them to have a great experience getting to their data. Basically, what you're trying to do is get everything you can out of the way of their data, which is something that Tableau does great anyway. We're espousing those desktop principles where you can connect to anything you want and then providing that inside of a familiar web experience for people. So, like I said, we've got this portal.inworks.com up if you want to go in and look at any of those demos, the education, finance, Notch. There's other ones I didn't look at, the Showcase, Interburger. They're all there for you. Happy to answer any questions on that. But I will leave it there for now.
So we don't have any questions in the chat yet, but if anybody has a question, you can put it into the chat or the Q&A.
So I did get a question through the chat. There's just someone asking for that link. And so again, it's right up here at the top. I don't know if I zoom in if you can see that, but portals.interworks.com, that one's up. And then if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see all of these live demos. You click on the view demo, and then you'll be able to see that. You're welcome to use these as inspiration as well. We have a lot of clients who pull it up, and they look at that just as kind of an art of the possible, and then see if they can build something like that themselves too.
And we did have a question come through. It's required to deploy the portal.
So the portal itself lives on a web server. And so you'll need to have a small, lightweight web server that can support the portal on top of it. But other than that, that's all that you need. Now that's in terms of like hardware. Sorry, if you're talking about like level of effort on top of that, usually we can get it set up in 3 days or so. And with this portal site, you can come in and request some more information, and then you can even get your own trial site set up to see what it's like. But as you go in, what you do is you come in, you connect to your Tableau server environment, and you pass through all the authentication and everything that you need, and you make sure you get yourself all connected and set up, what version you're using, what connection you want to use, what username, all of that. Do we need trusted tickets? There's all of this documented right there. And then you have your own dedicated URL for it, which then connects back to your Tableau server environment, and you're up and running.
All right, awesome. I think that's it. If anything else comes through, we'll come back around, and you're gonna pass to Aaron.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Oh, okay, cool. Now, great. Now I'm the presenter. So let me PowerPoint
Perfect.
right from the beginning. Cool. So thanks. So my name is Erin Simpler Kellett, and just to echo what Ben said, I hope everyone is doing okay. Just keeping on, and sending my best wishes to everyone out there. My presentation is connecting Tableau and SharePoint. And a little bit about me, I'm an analyst turned IT person, and I discovered Tableau as a tool that could help with my own analysis, and then realized I liked teaching other people how to use it, so I moved into IT. So I've spent the last several years in IT helping users visualize data to support decision making, and I work for the federal government. Outside of work, I mostly try and keep my 20-month-old toddler out of trouble with varying levels of success. So do any of you get frustrated when people don't update the data you need to display in your dashboards? Well, if so, you're in luck, because I'm going to share some ideas to update their data. Specifically, visualize it, publicize it, and make it easy to update. If you don't have data in SharePoint and you maybe use other systems, keep an open mind, because some of the tips and tricks I'm going to show here may apply to other platforms, particularly Salesforce or even custom platforms where you're hosting data. So in this talk, I'm going to take you through the journey of an analyst wrangling their team's data, and I'll give you background about how SharePoint stores data, how to connect to that data in Tableau, and then going full circle, I'm going to show you how to connect your Tableau dashboard back to your SharePoint list so that dashboard users can edit their data easily. So your team's data can live in many different forms. You've probably seen this as you try and organize, really organize your work, organize your projects, really anything like that. Excel can be a really common way to store your data, but it does have some drawbacks. You have issues with data quality because you can't force people to enter numbers in a numbers column. And you may have issues with dropdowns, like maybe not having them. For example, in the past in spreadsheets, I've labeled projects as high when actually the scale was small, medium, and large. So you don't realize till you go to analyze it that people might have interpreted your column names a little differently. SharePoint can be a great tool for this. I like to think of it as a structured spreadsheet. If you're familiar with databases, it's kind of like a database. Maybe it's a database, I'm not quite sure. But I like to think of it as a structured spreadsheet. You set the names and column types, and then people can enter only the data that you set in there. So if you have a dropdown, they can only enter values in the dropdown list. And it's editable through a browser. So you don't have the issues like in an Excel, you would have issues with locking people out of your file. Not the case in this with SharePoint. And you also, users can enter the data through forms. So kind of like, you know, a traditional like web form that you're more used to seeing. Users can enter their data through that. And that's a lot of people are more used to entering their data in that format as opposed to in spreadsheets. So for this presentation, just have a little bit of fun. I'm gonna use my dream job, which would be running data analytics at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And on a serious note, I do think I could add a lot of value to that organization. So if you know anyone there or if you work there, please, and it's real, please find me on LinkedIn. I hope it's real. As a data analyst at Hogwarts, one of my tasks is to capture project data so that the whole team and the headmasters know what's happening, and the head knows which houses are responsible for which projects and where those projects are. So this data lives in a SharePoint list, and the image on the right demonstrates what end users would see when they're trying to edit their data. And so for my team at Hogwarts, all project managers are responsible for updating the status and notes fields for their projects. And we discuss it weekly with the management team and the headmaster. So I want my team and headmaster to quickly see the project status. So I want to create a Tableau dashboard. To do this, I use Tableau Desktop, and I can connect directly to a SharePoint list. So in my Connect to Data screen, I can find SharePoint list. And then once I get to the screen, I have to put in some different pieces of information. The first thing I have to put in is my SharePoint site. So I've had a little bit of trouble in the past figuring out what exactly my site name is. My tip here would be take the link that you get to, the link where your list is, and just remove everything from list onwards. Delete all of that, and that's your site name. It also may take some trial and error. You then have to put a few other pieces of information about your SharePoint instance into Tableau. So is it online or on-prem? And what kind of authentication do you use? You know, you may need to, if you don't know that offhand, contact your IT department, and they'll know that stuff. So now I'm going to visualize my data. Now that I've connected to it, I can turn my SharePoint data set into a visualization in Tableau, and this helps the headmaster see what projects might be at risk and really calls them out, and it also helps the entire team see what other people are working on, what they're working on, and particularly visualizing the data can highlight issues either with projects or with data quality. So once you start visualizing it and the entire team knows you're visualizing it and knows that the headmaster is looking at it, they're a lot more likely to update their data and just make sure things stay on track. Now that I have this dashboard at Hogwarts, I'm going to share this Hogwarts has Tableau Server. So in my example here, so I'm going to share this dashboard, publish it to Tableau Server. Tableau Server, if you're not familiar, is a way you can share your Tableau visualizations with people inside or even outside of your organization. Tableau website has a lot more information about that. So I'm going to publish this to Tableau Server. The entire team and the headmaster can look at it. So a few things to remember when you're connecting to SharePoint data. It does require an additional software download. It's called a SharePoint driver. So when you connect to your SharePoint data the first time, it's going to give you a little message that says on the bottom corner that says, click here to download drivers, and that'll take you to the drivers page and let you see what you need to download. You may also, at this point, need to work with your IT department to download that driver. The other thing to remember is when you're connecting to SharePoint data, it's actually an extract of your data. It's not a live connection. That means an extract, think of an extract as a snapshot of your data. So when I update my SharePoint list, it doesn't automatically update my visualization. I have to manually refresh it in Tableau Desktop. And I included a screenshot to the side where you can see how to refresh an extract in Tableau Desktop. Or I can automatically refresh it from Tableau Server. So if you do have Tableau Server, it's a possibility that you could maybe have the data refresh every hour or something like that. But you have to keep that in mind. So, and make sure you have it in your, it really is a good practice to, in your dashboard, have somewhere when the data was last updated. So people aren't expecting to see their data in there and it's not there. Then they contact you, and then we all have better things to do. So now that you have the visualization, you're sharing it with your team. I'm still really frustrated with my team members. They're supposed to be updating their statuses and they're just not doing it. It makes the data less useful and doesn't make me look great. And the headmaster may make bad decisions because of issues with the data. So I need to make it really easy for my team members to correct data mistakes or make data updates. So that's where a URL action comes in. You can have users open up a SharePoint list and edit individual items from the Tableau dashboard. That means when they see old data or maybe an old update or an old status, they can go in and change it right away. They don't have to remember what it was, go into SharePoint, find it in the SharePoint list, click edit, and then make their change. They can click and boom, it's open for them. So you do this through a URL action. And a URL action is a type of dashboard action that lets a user open up a web page by clicking on the data in a chart. And Tableau can even pass a data field from a viz into the URL. And we're going to leverage that for this example. And I'll go through here step by step on how to create action. So the first thing you need to do is determine the URL that is needed to edit an item in a SharePoint list. An item is really what in the SharePoint world, what they call a row. So it's really just to edit one of, in this case, it's one of the projects, planning the sorting hat ceremony. So go to that item, go to any item and click edit, and then find a shareable link. You can either find it in the browser, or in this case, I found it through the copy link button. And this shows me the link. And save that. You'll need it in a future step. So step 2, I need to create a Tableau view that displays data at the SharePoint list row level. That means I'm not aggregating my data in this details view. This is each row displayed in this chart is a row in SharePoint. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to, I want my end users to be able to click on one of those boxes and open up that item in SharePoint. So I can't show aggregated data. Then this is the kind of the tricky part. You need to make sure that the SharePoint ID is in your view. So your SharePoint connection automatically has a field called ID. Think of it as like a row number. You can use this. You'll use this to pass this through into your URL to tell Tableau which item to open in SharePoint. One tip here: usually the ID field is not meaningful to end users, so you can have it in your view, but not actually show it. by dragging it into rows and then unchecking the show header button. So it's in there, but it can't be seen. That helps with reducing questions. Then the last step is to set up your Tableau URL action. So if you go to your dashboard, you click Actions and then go to URL, and then you set your URL action here. So you select which sheet you want to make clickable, is what I call when you click on it and it opens up SharePoint. I want to make it on a selection. You could also make it on a menu or something like that. And then paste your URL from step 1, paste that into this URL piece here. But there's a little piece of the URL has ID equals 1 in the original URL. So I deleted the 1 and I replaced it with a data field. So in this case, you can use this little arrow here to insert a data field, the ID field, or you can just type in the little carets to insert a data field. When you see carets, it means that the data is being passed through to the URL, and it won't just, and it's not just text. Okay, so now that I have added this functionality, my team is getting dashboards emailed to their inbox every Monday from Tableau server subscriptions. They know the headmaster will ask them about it on our Wednesday meeting, and they need to update their statuses before then. And it's easy. They have no excuses. Just a couple other bonus ideas you could think about. You can use the URL action to create a kind of a fake button. This create a new project button that I have here does a Tableau URL action to create add a new item. So if I wanted to add a new project to the list, and you follow the same technique of figuring out what that URL is, and you just don't need to pass data into it. You just you can just create a new URL action for that. I also could embed this dashboard into the SharePoint site if I wanted to. That kind of builds on the earlier talk about bringing your dashboards where people are. So if everyone's using SharePoint already, consider embedding your dashboard there. So I'm 1 minute over, apologies. So things to remember, when you connect to it connects to a snapshot of your data and requires an additional software driver, an additional software download. And then if you use the URL action trick, make sure you include instructions in your dashboard and manage expectations on data freshness. So if people aren't expecting the dashboard to update right away if it's only updating every night. And then also keep in mind that SharePoint lists can have permissions on them, and that could mean that someone could have permission to your dashboard, but maybe not permission to edit the list, and they're going to see error messages if you do that. So you may just something to be aware of. And that's it. So any questions?
I don't see anything in the chat yet, but let's just hold on for a second and see if anything comes through. Let's see. So did you mention that Tableau will only read the quote default list in SharePoint? Also, might be good to mention with free text like notes, you may need to change the field to plain text, or you might see a bunch of HTML text.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you, I didn't want to get too far into the different things with SharePoint, but yeah, that's a really good point. So when you can set different list filters in SharePoint, and as a Tableau developer, when you connect to your SharePoint list, you're only going to see the data that's filtered in your default filter. So if your default filter is only data about you, like only your projects, you're only going to be able to visualize that data. So you need to then change your default list. Once you create your visualization, you can share it with everybody because it's a snapshot of the data. You no longer have the SharePoint permissions, but the developer's permissions impact what can be displayed. And then, yeah, I have seen some weird characters with some of the stuff. So was that, Brittany, was that your tip that if you switch it to plain text?
That was actually Tim.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks.
All right. So if there aren't any other questions, you're going to be passing to Sean.
Okay. Get to the participant screen. Okay.
All right, thanks, Erin. I'm going to share my screen now. Just jumping on there. All right. Okay, oops, sorry. All right, hi everyone. Thanks for coming for today's Tableau user group session. Hope everyone's doing well as well. Personally, I'm getting a bit of cabin fever. So it's great to be able to at least, talk to other people and present something that I'm pretty passionate about. So I'm really glad for this opportunity. So for today, I'm going to talk about Tableau and Python. And just a little bit background about me. I'm currently a data scientist at Lovelytics. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is I stare at code and I handle a lot any kind of coding projects and assignments that come into the company. But that's also why I really enjoy visualizing things on Tableau as well. Just because that's a great distraction and a great break from all the coding that I do. So I sit at kind of like an interesting interface between Python coding and really hardcore like data science and data engineering, but also with some experience in Tableau and data visualization. The other thing that I'm interested in is explainable artificial intelligence. What that is just basically trying to unpack the black box of machine learning and help people better understand, what's actually going on under the hood when these machine learning algorithms are giving you certain predictions. So the reason why I raised that is because the demo that I'm going to be showing later with Python is going to implement a little bit of this, and you'll be able to see what exactly I'm talking about over there. So that's a little bit about me. So what today's presentation is going to be about, it's going to be a high-level overview of what is possible, of just really a small sliver of what's possible actually, when we combine Python's functionalities with Tableau's visualization capabilities. I'm going to cover two specific use cases. The first one is text analysis, and the second one is machine learning. And feel free to reach out with any specific technical questions, either at the end of the session, or at the end of my presentation, or at the end of the session, just feel free to drop me an email as well. So I think the first question to really answer is, why try and integrate Python or R? And I think the most important caveat here is that Tableau's really good at doing what I call last mile calculations. If you have just a little bit of data processing to do, Tableau's great for that. But if you're talking about fundamental problems with your data that comes much earlier than the CSV that you already have on hand with you when you're loading into Tableau, then R and Python, having R and Python built into Tableau as well, gives you the ability to use far more advanced techniques, not just to analyze your data, but also process your data before you visualize it. And some of the examples I've raised there are, machine learning, natural language processing, and advanced statistical analysis. And why combine them? Because you could always just write CSV files and bring that into Tableau. But of course, the whole point here is it's a lot faster. If I'm able to simply do a simple update of certain parameters on Tableau itself, I don't have to trouble myself or someone else to export these CSV files every single time I need to change a parameter. So these are, I think some of the big reasons why combining both Python or R with Tableau is a pretty good idea, I think. So I'm going to talk a bit about the first use case, which is text analysis, and then I'll talk about machine learning later on. So the main problem, the problem for this situation is that I want to run some text analysis on data. So for example, I want to know how polarizing that data is. So is it positive? Is it negative? Is it really subjective, or is it written in a more objective manner? What are the main people or organizations that are mentioned in that text data? So that's kind of like some of the basic low-hanging fruit analysis that you can run on text data. So if this data comes in a fairly clean and consistent format, then I think it's reasonable to think that having a workflow which basically runs the same analysis again and again is something that should be possible and something that's going to save everyone a ton of time. Because then instead of someone bugging me to run the analysis again, that takes up like maybe 20, 30 minutes every single time, that person can do it by themselves with the Tableau prep workflow. So that's kind of like what I conceive of as one of the big use cases when combining Python as well as Tableau. And in this case, it's Tableau prep. So some of this is actually really simple. And I've put a GIF here just to show everyone how easy it is to activate TabPy that really runs everything under this. And it's literally just 2 lines of code over there. So this is kind of how you initialize and start up TabPy. And after that, I'm just going to let this run for one more time for everyone to see it. And that's it, all right? And then once this happens, all you need to do is to go into Tableau prep itself and run the script. So, so this GIF didn't start when it needed to. But basically there it is. All right, so you start with some data, and then you move into, you can clean the data in whatever way you want. And this is just to show you the text data that there is. So in this data set is basically a list of BBC News articles. And then what you do is you connect to your Python server, you click on which script you want to run. And so in this case, I'm showing you the script. I'm sorry it's a bit small, but I will show you the actual workflow after this, and then running the function itself. And so you can see there on the left, it's the console, and that's where everything is happening under the hood. And that's also a useful way for you to check that your script's running correctly. As you can see over there, it's printing which row it's processing at this point. So that's kind of like this is a really easy workflow. As long as the data comes in a really consistent format, it's cleaned. This is something that you could easily reproduce for a lot of people without having to spend too much time helping people do the same things over and over again. So at the end of this, you can see that there is quite a bit of insights you can unearth from just that simple code. So you can see over there we have text polarity, which is basically a measure between -1 and 1 of how positive or negative the text was. We also uncovered the organizations that were mentioned in the text. We also found which people or geopolitical entities. So like countries, you can see there, countries, cities, or so on. What kinds of cities are being mentioned? What kind of people are being mentioned? These are things that we can easily do and can easily automate now that we can put it on Tableau prep, and anyone basically can run it. So that's the first use case for text analysis. And actually, the entire process for building this is actually available online. I wrote this like a couple of months ago, so I thought this was pretty useful to rehash again, just for people who are interested in doing like text analysis in Tableau itself. So that's for text analysis in the first use case. And I think like a big question right now is, how difficult is it exactly to implement this into the Tableau environment? So I think I split it into 3 levels. The first one is just setting up, like just installing TabPy and getting things going. It's super easy. You saw that it's just 2 lines of code. Installing it is just like maybe 3 or 4 lines. And they tell you what lines to key in as well. So that's super simple. So it's actually really easy to get things going. The part where some people might face a little bit of trouble with is writing like the functions that you're going to use through TabPy. because TabPy is pretty specific in how they want the data to come to go out and come in. So you do need to actually kind of know how to write a function, for example, how to import the packages, and how to code and how to debug problems without an interactive interface as well. So you do need some coding basics to write it correctly. But I think this is kind of like a situation where if you spend a couple of days on it, you should be able to get past and write at least a really simple function. And from there, I think writing more complex functions is just a little small step forwards. I think the most difficult part is probably deploying it, and this is something where I think it requires you to have a fairly good understanding of IT infrastructure to set it up correctly, set up securely as well, I must mention, for your Tableau online or server environment. But of course, I think this shouldn't put you off if you can think of a really useful, interesting use case, and you think that use case is going to save everyone a lot of time. I think deploying it is obviously going to be a huge boon for everyone. Actually. So that's kind of like whether or not it's difficult. And then I'm going to move on to the second use case, which is machine learning. So the problem for this one is, so I want a dashboard, for example, to evaluate my predictive model and get predictions immediately. So for example, I want to, if I'm interested for how the model would predict what I would, whether or not I would do something, then I can key in those parameters and get the prediction immediately for myself without having to run any code. So the objective here is kind of to build a dashboard which runs a Python script that generates the predictions automatically. I don't need to produce a CSV file. I don't need to run to you and tell you what the results are. All you need to do is just to download the dashboard, connect it to the TabPy server, and run the analysis yourself. So I'm going to now show everyone the dashboard itself, and then we can have a look. So this is a specific use case that we have done a couple of times. And for this use case, we're talking about a monthly customer retention. So the focus here is, can we predict which customers are going to purchase again from us in the next month? And so this is kind of like, and this dashboard is kind of like an easy way for people to look at, how accurate your model was, and are there certain deficiencies in the model that we should perhaps be looking out for, especially when we're accounting for it in the analytics stage. So in this first view, we have kind of an overview of the accuracy. So you can see from here that the model, for the first line, the model typically misses people who have fewer orders in the past 3 months, and you can see that the average for that is 2.6. So perhaps it's difficult for the model to kind of predict people who don't order as frequently in the past 3 months, which kind of makes sense actually. And then interestingly and thankfully, the model is actually correctly identifying people whose average lifetime spend is considerably higher than the people whom they're missing, and that's almost double. And so at least we know that the most valuable customers are not being missed out on in our predictive model. And the last one, which was quite interesting, is that there wasn't any substantial difference in terms of how accurate the model was for whether or not someone subscribed to marketing emails. So maybe that just means that no one really no one really reads marketing emails, because I certainly don't. So those are some of the things that this overview is just going to make it easy for people to understand what's exactly going on under the hood and how accurate your model is performing. So if I move to customer analysis, I get a dashboard where I can actually look at every single customer. And on the right side, you see that we actually decompose the prediction into how much each variable contributed to that final predicted probability. So for example, in this case, you can see that customer 3130 had a 65% chance of purchasing again last month. So how exactly did this model arrive at the number? You can see that on the right-hand side, it's basically just summing all the numbers on the right-hand side. You can see that the biggest contributing factor is the number of orders that they've had ever since they registered as a customer. Alternatively, you can also see that if they ordered on the desktop client, apparently that causes them to be less likely to purchase again next month. So I can also click here, for example, and filter on a different customer and see, for example, that for example, for this person has been a customer for 53 days. That makes it a bit more likely that they're going to purchase again next month. So all of this is all of this work was done in Tableau. All this visualization was done in Tableau. But a lot of the legwork was done in Python, and all of this are still fundamentally CSV files. So what exactly is the last bit that we are interested in, which is the bit where we're actually interfacing with Python and getting predictions immediately. So that's the last one, which is what if scenarios. So you look over here, you get to key in parameters, and these parameters basically correspond to all the variables that we've been using in the model before this to make predictions for whether or not someone would purchase again in the next month. So you can see over here with these set of parameters, these are the predictions that the model is generating. So the probability here is like 49.5%. So kind of like on the edge as to whether or not this person is going to purchase again. So maybe let's change the total number of orders they've ever had as a customer, because that seems to be pretty important for what we saw earlier. So now it's at 5. Maybe if I bump it to 10, and we can see that everything changes, and we can see that the probability is also increased to 74%. But the most important thing here is that unlike a conventional machine learning model, where all you get is that 74% number at the end of it, right over here, we're able to break it down exactly to tell you which is the biggest contributing factor, which is how many days has it been since they first registered as a customer. And we can see that the next biggest variable is how many orders they had in the past 3 months. Because if they had 2 orders in the past 3 months, then perhaps it makes them a little bit less likely to purchase again in the coming month. So all of these numbers change and are unique for every single customer. And that's because all these variables interact with each other. So for example, if I have more orders in the past 3 months, I have less orders, since I started. So because maybe I'm a new customer, these things, don't always interact with each other. And that's why these numbers are usually unique for each customer, just because everyone has kind of like different characteristics. So so this is all running on TabPy, and just to prove to you that it is, I can show you the console, which is right over here. So this is where everything is going, and this is where it's running on Python itself. And so this is kind of like a way to show you how this is kind of like a useful use case where instead of having to come to me to generate these predictions for you, you could easily key this in yourself and consider different what-if scenarios, especially for different personas or different target groups that you're looking to target for, especially in your marketing or discount strategy. So those are the 2 use cases. So what kind of other use cases are there then? So with this case, I think there are 4 main groups. I'm just going to zoom past all of this, but significant tests, clustering, calculating drive time isochrones, or just doing like stochastic modeling. So these are all the different types of use cases that you can do. The 2 use cases I've shown are kind of like the easier, low-hanging fruit use cases. But all of this, you can easily think of ways to integrate them into your dashboards that will really improve the functionality and improve the kind of analysis that you can do on a day-to-day basis. So, just to kind of conclude, I think there has been before this, there was quite a big division between people who code and people who biz. And I think the nice part about TabPy is that finally it's something that you can do both of them at the same time. You don't have to either choose to Tableau everything or Python everything. And finally, you can actually do both at the same time. So thank you very much. That's all I have for today's presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Great. So we had a question come through. Is TabPy just for the connection, or does it have NLP capabilities too? If not, what libraries or packages are you using? TextBlob, Vader, Sentiment, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So TabPy only gives you the connection and enables you to run Python scripts. So for the library itself, I have loaded the script itself here. It's called the Spacey library, and that's kind of one of the industry standard kind of like packages for natural language processing. So Spacey is the one that I used for this case. So you would have to install, just to clarify, you would have to install these packages into your local environment beforehand. So it's not going to work like out of the box. Obviously for TabPy, together with TabPy, they install certain basic things for you. But things like Spacey don't come, don't come together in that download, because not everyone's going to use it, and it's actually a pretty big package. So things like that, you have to kind of figure out how to download this yourself. There's plenty of, I think there's plenty of, there are plenty of websites out there that tell you, how to download Python packages into the right environment and stuff like that. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. And we have another question. Would your workflow for text analysis work for email content?
Yes. So, so some things would have to be changed. So if you looked over here, the only thing that I'm actually using from the data in the prep workflow is the text column. So theoretically speaking, you could strip like the category and the text and the title out. So here you can see that the original data set had category and title. You could strip that out and just keep the text, and it would still work exactly the same way. So I think that's really kind of like part of the appeal for me of integrating Python with Tableau. There's so many things that are really simple in Python, and when you put it into a Tableau prep workflow, it runs so much more easily. It's much easier for the average person who doesn't really have coding experience to use as well. So yeah, it would definitely deal with emails pretty easily too.
All right, and we have a couple more questions. Is PyTab server or Python server required to schedule the Tableau prep flow to the Tableau server?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think, so that's kind of like a bit out of what I know for now. But my best guess is that when you want to deploy it onto a server environment, you can actually automate the prep workflow itself. And as long as you've configured the connection correctly. So in this case, the server is my computer. It's a local host. It's obviously possible. You can obviously do this with a Python server that's actually living on the internet itself. So that means that it's always running and this connection always works. So my thinking is, if you're able to automate the prep workflow, and as long as the server continues running and has all the packages you need, then you don't need, then that's basically all you need to automate it, the Python script as well. I think that answers the question, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
And we have one more question. Is TabPy an open source add-in to Tableau?
Yes. So TabPy actually started as an open source package outside of Tableau. But more recently, I think it was like 2 years ago that Tableau finally took it on and are now in charge of maintaining it. So the best part about that is that you don't ever have to worry about TabPy not working with Tableau for you. So it's open source, it's free, you can download it, play with it as much as you want. The only requirement is that obviously you need to have desktop and prep.
Cool. All right, I think that's it for now. You're gonna pass to Tomasz.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, and hey. So, couple of things. First of all, can you see my screen? I assume yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So I made the presentation in the last few minutes. So finally I have something, but it's not well polished. What I'd like to talk today is really about this whole external service analytics extension space, which is also started with this TabPy project. So just a background, and I'm under NDA, so I can't really go into the details, but TabPy was built by a company who wanted really badly Python integration. So they went to a third party and asked Tableau to do it. And that third party were being acquired by a large corporation. And then Tableau finally bought the IP from that large corporation. And now they own this whole TabPy space, TabPy application. But the original implementation of this TabPy was not really just for for Python, it was really useful for any web services. So it really supported to call any external web services written in any programming language hosted in the cloud, and make sure that and it was able to really bind Tableau calculations in desktop, calculation in server, calculation in prep to those web services. So that's the topic. And before we get started, we have a free TabPy server. So if you want to try out all the Python examples shared earlier, or you want to go with the tutorial shared also on the TabPy project page, you can just use this tabpy.starschema.com. And I quickly checked, and it already have the sentiment analysis packages like the Vader sentiment deployed, what is part of the Tableau tutorial. So you can actually try all this machine learning data science thing from there, from the Tableau GitHub page or from the TabPy page without installing anything on your own computer. You just need the desktop and follow the tutorials. So couple of things about me. I'm absolutely not humble. So I'm one of these Tableaus and masters, and I'm supposed to be humble, but actually I'm not necessarily humble. I have other advantages or good things, good personal qualities. One of my good personal qualities that whatever I touch in Tableau becomes eventually an API or a productized feature. First of all, I can't really spell this, but in 2006, I published a guest blog post on tableaus.com about how can you create custom visualizations using D3 and other chart types. How can you create write back functionalities inside Tableau dashboards? And within 6 months, Tableau just productized that idea. So we actually productized it together, and we released the extension API. And I also wanted to do something with this external service stuff, which is again practically useful to call external any web services in the cloud, as I mentioned. So your own code can be integrated with Tableau to execute functions inside Tableau based on your code. And I thought that it will be so great that use it in the Tableau space other than TabPy. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Python. I think Python as a programming language is too easy, and I hate easy stuff. So at TC19, I went to the hackathon. I built a nice demonstration. How can you actually use this external service API, which was at the time was not documented. The API team had no idea that this API is supported by Tableau because of this acquisition stuff. So I built a nice new programming language support, like a Haskell programming language support to Tableau in that hackathon. And after Tableau realized that this is so cool that they also have to productize it, just like they did with the extension API. So this was in November last year. And this is like, at that time, nobody really understood like what is this external API, why it's tabpy/external API. I will talk about a little bit. But after 5 months, Tableau announced that from now, this external web services and TabPy will be rebranded as Analytics Extension API, and whatever I done at that hackathon will be supported. And now all the integrators, all software companies can create their own services, providing their own algorithms or calculations available for every Tableau users. So going back to the previous example, like let's say Lovelytics creates a nice machine learning algorithm, they can deploy it in their own cloud infrastructure and make it available for all of their clients as a software as a service solution without installing everything on-prem in their clients. And I think this is huge, and it will change a couple of things in Tableau for the next few months. So just a nice screenshot that it was around that time when we had TC, and Tableau quickly did a search and replace in the code base, and now we have analytics extensions. And today, eventually, I'd like to show you what are these analytics extensions and why this is useful. And since I have a few friends at Mapbox, and I love those guys, and they are also supposed to be like a local company, even if Alan and Chris not here, I'd like to show you why this extension, this analytics extension will change the way how you use Tableau Prep and Tableau Desktop in a year or maybe two. And again, everything what I'm showing is highly experimental, so it might crash or might not, but I will try my best. So let's start with the beginning. Let's start with what is this extension, External Services API. So I have, if I came here and check my connection here, analytics extension connection, I can specify my own web service, the one what I'm running using the external API, which is a well-defined documented API supported by Tableau. And if I implement that API, I can call my own service. Tableau will send the data of the dashboards in real time, and I can calculate them and return back with data. So this is what you see is a very basic Fibonacci calculation. But the fun fact that I added a new calculation language into Tableau using Haskell, and Haskell is a pretty awesome language. It's really hard to learn, so I like it because you know, I'm that kind of special snowflake type of guy. See, it's just, you know, really chatty what it does. So it prints the first 20 Fibonacci number. And as you see, it's, as I drag this calculation written in a programming language on my choice, I was able to add stuff. One thing why is this cool? Because even if you're using Python or even if you're not using Python, you can create real, or Haskell in my case, you can really easily build an interactive environment. Let's say I can edit my code on the top and see the results on the bottom. So this is like an ordinary extension, and ordinary extensions are just visual elements interacting with your dashboard. And whatever I'm editing here in my extensions are executed in the external services extension. So let's say I want to show all the prime numbers starting from 7. And if it's, wow, something went wrong. Why you are doing this? Let's try it here. Don't do this for me. Let's try for here, then we will restart. So if I like sort this number in this, I'm using like an ordinary parameter control, I can just real time add my Python or Haskell code, and it will be executed in real time. If I add reverse, then it's supposed to reverse it. So I can really, first I have to reverse and then sort, right? So it's really interactive. I can add my own code. And why it's not working? Maybe because I have to start. No, now it's working. So it's starting from 7, and if I execute it, it has to work from 11. And if I need to calculate the Fibonacci numbers, then it should work. As I mentioned, it's highly experimental, but I think you get the idea. All of the calculations I'm executing are outside of Tableau, and all the visualization like a code browser is also external to Tableau, but I'm only using real standard APIs. And the message here that with these external APIs, everything is possible. Let me show something more useful. I think this is fun. And if you're really into coding, you understand why sometimes working with real programming code in your calculations inside Tableau can give you like additional benefits. But let me show something a little bit more useful still in desktop. As you see, I'm not necessarily the best in designing dashboards. And that's not because I'm bad in designing dashboards. It's because I not necessarily care how this stuff look like. So let's go to our nice other service, the Mapbox service. To use Mapbox, I have to specify a key, an API key to use their services. Why it's not here? Nice. So what we see here is that after I added a connection to my local services, which is not a TabPy server, but an external service API server, I was also able to do forward or geolocation lookups. So I have the state information here. I have this forward geocode calculation. And if I check what this calculation does, it's practically calls like a forward function in my own API external service. It again, nothing to do with TabPy. It's I control what my function will return if it gets an address information. And in our case, I just return with the geo coordinates. And this can be also work in a different way. So I try to use something relevant from these days, and I used John Hopkins COVID-19 dataset. Now it tries to geocode it. And what I can also do, and it's also not possible out of the box with Tableau, that I have my dataset has a latitude and longitude information, and I can just quickly do depends what quickly means, but I can certainly do lookup based on the geo coordinates and came up what are those addresses where those GPS locations are pointing. And I think this is huge. And if I check how this reverse calculations look like, I can check that, hey, give me the address with the full hierarchy from the longitude and latitude coordinate and return as a string. So this is something what everyone in the future can leverage without installing everything, and you can set up a lot of external services which will enrich the existing analytical capabilities, even if it's AI machine learning related, or even if it's like data enrichment as in this example. And it's fairly, let me try to crash this guy. It's fairly dynamic. So I have a parameter driven reverse geocoding calculation. It has to go into the internet, and since I'm not paying anything to Mapbox, in fact, they are paying to me, so I don't necessarily have the best plan for API call throttling. Anyway, I can, if I check this reverse parameter, then I can say that reverse and the parameter could be like a region, or it could be an address. So if I change this from region to address, it will return, instead of this region information, to address information. So as you see, all of these calculations, all of these external services calls are really tightly integrated into Tableau, and it works practically everywhere. Now here comes the fun part. Let's try to do it in Tableau Prep, because most of the time when you are working with, I don't know, geospatial data, you're using an ETL tool, let's say Tableau Prep, which is actually becoming eventually a nice data preparation tool, ETL tool as well. I have a nice data set with a list of in and out burger locations. I like in and out burger, and when 2 years ago I moved here to the States, I was really shocked that I picked this state, or actually a location where there are no in and out burgers, and it turned out that actually this half of the states doesn't have in and out burgers, which is pretty sad. Anyway, if I like to do a geocoding, like getting the GPS locations from this in and out burger location, I can certainly add a script location and ask Mapbox services, again, which could be hosted by Mapbox himself, to do this for me. Since this external analytical extension API is not supported and not documented and not necessarily working well, you don't see other options than rserv and TabPy, but obviously it supports external services in a way. And after we had a lot of discussions with Tableau, they will redesign this whole configuration panel to support external services, like vendor made external services as first-class citizens in this whole Tableau prep world. But let's show it quickly, like what can it do? Again, I need to have my nice box key. And if I log on to my server, I have to add a code, like what's the code which will execute the geocoding. Obviously, it will be executed by a server. So this option for us doesn't make any sense. I can put like an empty file here. It never gets executed simply because the UI wants me to follow the TabPy configuration, but we don't use it in a TabPy way. And I can practically add anything here, saying like forward address. And if I'm lucky, and I am, I can see what were the initial addresses in the data set, what did we look up, what are the longitude and the latitude coordination, what's the accuracy of that geolocation, and what's the relevance. I think this is pretty dope. Because what you usually do in these prep flows is like cleaning up addresses and doing like data matching and other stuff. And in case you can use like deduplication services, you can use some customer scoring directly from your own, directly from these vendors. And also you can build these services by yourself to leverage your own logic, your own corporate logic. I think this is huge. We just have to wait a couple of months until this whole stuff will be really fully implemented into Tableau, but I just wanted to give you like a sneak peek from the future. And I hope that some part were understandable. I'm sure that I'm not the most qualified people to explain really scientific stuff. So that's it. Any questions maybe?
No questions yet.
So everything was clear. That's cool.
Well, this person said, sorry you lost me on in and out.
Oh, yes. And yeah. So it's just you can use geolocations with external services without installing everything. And there will be providers like Mapbox who are working to productize this stuff, what I showed to you, and make it available pretty soon. However, if you want to live on the dangerous side, we can also share all the source codes and set it up for yourself. But in Tableau Prep, in and out, the example was to generate longitude and latitude coordinates directly from address information using connecting to an external services without doing any Python coding or installing any TabPy. Even if it's really confusing that it's written that we connected to a TabPy server, but we did not connect to a TabPy server. This is like a lie. This button is a lie, and it offers much more than what's written there. But yeah, I mean, I'm stopped talking. I hope at least anyway.
We had a question that says, can you use SAS code?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely integrate. I know that RapidMiner already integrated their tool set. So I can ask if SCS is already integrated, but it's definitely possible. MATLAB is also added their code in the same way.
All right. You can pass to Caesar next.
Yes. Yeah.
Great, and I got the presenter ball. Also, thank you, Tomasz. That was awesome. Brilliant as usual too. Well, great. So let's start off here. And show my slides here. All right, great. So my presentation is basically something I've done every year at most of our lightning talks, is kind of come back from Tableau conference and share what I learned at the conference too. But this time it's awesome. There was really some great presentations at the conference. Also, I'm going to take a quick little pause here and let folks know too that TC20 has been changed to a virtual event. So I don't know if you've been keeping up with stuff a lot. There's been a lot of broken hearts and a lot of really sad people, but I mean, these are sad times. And I mean, really just in the whole scheme of things, I'm actually kind of glad that we're able to still kind of connect even virtually, and keep everyone safe and still continue going. But at least here, I've got my memories from TC19, and I do want to share them with you. And, you know, it's not the happiest of times. Also, I put this all together before I'd even found out about this year's event, but still, hopefully we can all get together and definitely enjoy each other in 2021. So let me start off with kind of letting you know also a little bit about some of the things that I saw there, and specifically some of the fun I had was really just looking at just absolute brilliance out there at the conference. If you've never been to Tableau conference, definitely go. You'll get your money's worth, because there's just people like Tomasz walking around, and you can talk to him and ask him questions, and sometimes he'll spark ideas in your mind. And all of these people listed here have completely sparked ideas in my mind. I came back home and I couldn't wait to get to some of the data that I've seen and try out some of the techniques that they were teaching at conference. It is the best bang for buck that you can possibly get for data conferences. Get out there, look, and really, even if it's virtual, I'm pretty sure you'll definitely leave with a lot of information. But right now, I want to talk about some of the brilliance that was shared there. Johnny Walker did a presentation at the Mapbox booth. He literally sat there with his MacBook in hand and presented off his MacBook, and was brilliant. A couple weeks ago, he did something on YouTube, and I'm surprised it doesn't have like 1 million views on it. But this is that link, and I can share it somehow with everyone too. Also, Mapbox in general, learned a lot about Mapbox. Talked to some brilliant people worked there. Chris Toomey, Alan Walker, Ryan Bowman. They all, like, I left every time talking to these guys, left with more and more ideas and just concepts of like, can I do this? Can I try this? Let's see. Then there's also Chris DiMartini and Tomasz, who we just saw, and Tomasz is so next level. And then add Chris DiMartini, and they're both just like it really is just like the Chicago Bulls. Talking to, really, they're so good. They're so good. And they, even when things were going absolute disaster in their presentation, they kept their cool, and they still blew my mind with what they presented. And finally, there was something that Chris presented there, was Kepler GL. And Kepler, I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it. Even if you haven't, you don't need to worry too much. I'm going to go through and demo it today so you can take a look at it. Kepler is part of the Uber open source platform. It's amazing, and something that Chris and Tomasz did was they actually ported it, and now it's an extension for Tableau. The one caveat for this, though, and for everything you're going to see here, is it either needs to run off a Macintosh, or like essentially a Mac OS, or a Tableau server. So PC users, you might need to find some way to get on a Mac OS to try this out, but it's phenomenal. So let me move on. So Kepler by itself, you can use that on a PC. The Kepler extension for Tableau, you do need to use a Mac. So let's move on, because I've got 15 minutes to do this, and there's a lot to cover. So can I do it all in 15 minutes? I don't know. Let's see. So going back to the data set that I came back, and just all these little ideas. If you don't know, I'm on Twitter a lot, a whole lot. This is a site that I found, and I find it fascinating because all it does is it gives you a quick earthquake alert whenever anywhere in the earth there's been an earthquake reported. Phenomenal. But in watching it, kind of noticed, I'm like, hey, California is shaking all the time. Really, like literally every single day, I'd see 2, 3, 4 tweets about California, just some sort of earthquake hitting California. Some were huge, and others were pretty insignificant. But it led me to go through, and this is something I put together, I don't know, like a week or two ago. But looking at California earthquake data, I took a look and found that pretty much most of these are centered in Southern California. So let's go to Caltech's earthquake data center. And I found a great data set. I did a lot of prep and some work and kind of move things around. So I'm reminding myself here about time. Talk less, move on to demo. Hopefully everybody can see this because I can't see you any longer. If you can't, let me know, but I'm assuming that we're all good. So I'm starting off with a really simple data set. Actually, you know what? Let me jump back for a second. Let me show you what I built really quickly in Tableau Public. And this was just kind of something I did for fun with the data set, just to kind of have fun with like this new morphism type, Caesar morphism type UI. This is something I did really quickly with the data, but it was still cool to see what was going on in California, and specifically Southern California with this data set. It's refreshing on me, which of course has got to happen while presenting. But I went through, mapped out, locations of all the earthquakes. You'll see size of magnitude, but it doesn't really show up well in the map. But you start to see the largest earthquake here was a 7.1. It happened near Bakersfield, California. So really interesting. It's beautiful to see just because I can see these fault lines so clearly when you go through and you map out. And this is about a little over a year and a half, maybe a year and 4 months of data. One of the big questions I had when I looked at this is this giant baseball diamond section here, where there just doesn't seem to be a lot of earthquakes there. And I'm like, why? So I continued moving on. I went to Mapbox Studio and used a lot of the tricks and tips I learned from Johnny Walker, and created some. This is actually one of Johnny's, one of his styles. But I went through and created this one I called Mojave because I wanted to have something that kind of looked like the Mojave Desert, and created a style that does look like the Mojave Desert. And if I zoom out enough, this is actually the Mojave Desert. So right now you get to see kind of this area in California. And what's interesting was, hey, look, there's this really cool looking baseball diamond type shape here. I wonder if that has anything to do with like what's happening, and if that kind of matches what was on my map. So I went through, learned how to do a lot of this styling from Johnny's presentation. But like I said, he recorded it. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. I'm surprised it only has 1,700 views. This should have 1 million views. I heard somebody drop his name from this presentation just today in a conference presentation of using ArcGIS and Mapbox together. Absolutely brilliant. But once again, back to the data. So let's see what we've got going on. But yeah, go and watch Johnny's session. It's really, really good. So here, I want to start off with just a worksheet that any one of us could build based off this data, showing that 7.1 Ridgecrest earthquake. And I just kind of have a county or municipality showing here. Rather simple, but also within the data set too. If I go back to that sheet, there are a couple things that are hidden. I have Latin long showing. I also have an ID for each one of the earthquakes. But heading to the dashboard, I'm going to take an extension and throw it on my dashboard. And now Tableau is going to ask me, which extension do you want? You can go to the gallery. I'm not going to go there pretty much because of time. But I have the Kepler extension, and I've got it downloaded. I know there's a lot of questions about this, but this is something that Chris and Tomasz had put together, working with DataBlick, also working with the folks who put together Kepler too. But you can drag on the extension, you can configure the extension. So it'll ask you for your Mapbox information. First, it's going to ask you which chart should it connect to. Here, I made it simple. I just made it sheet 1. Keeping with the Johnny Walker style, I just named it sheet 1. if you've never met Johnny, that won't make sense. But here it allows you to put in your Mapbox API key. It asks you to, a couple of things you may want to do in Kepler. But let's go through. Give it a click action to filter. What's our field? I think the only thing it shows up is municipality. And once again, municipality. This is Tableau to Kepler, Kepler to Tableau communication here. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's see. It will bring up a Mapbox map, and they've got a couple of maps here that are just kind of standard maps. But I'm going to go through, open up the GL interface here. So much you can do here. I'm really just touching the surface of this. I'm going to change this. So instead of showing points, I want to show hex spins, which Sarah Battersby showed me how to do hex spins in Tableau. Amazing, but really, really temperamental. These are beautiful, but also if you'll see, here we go. Let me shut this, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I have a map that's a little nicer than what I had before in Tableau, but we'll get better. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. Little things too, like if I went through and click on Ridgecrest here on my map, it filters Ridgecrest over here in Kepler. Click it off, everything goes back to normal. So that's kind of that interactivity we saw before. Let me add another extension. This is where I'm sure Tomas is sitting there going, you're playing with fire, dude. Let's see. Let me go through and drag this up here. My extensions. I'm going to go through, open the Kepler GL extension once again that I had downloaded from the Tableau site. And actually move this around because I want you all the way up there. And let me configure this one again. I'm going to configure it once again to sheet number 1. When it comes up, let's see. Oh, come on, Kepler. Oh, this is fun. There we go. No, okay. And I click and click and click. Okay. And I click next. It's going to ask me for that Mapbox key. It's going to ask me if I want a hover action. I'm going to leave that alone for now. But I'm going to, let me go ahead and do the same thing. Let's filter. I'm going to filter again for municipality. This essentially is that Kepler to Tableau communication, where you can also set up hover actions. You can set up your map background here too. Let me go ahead and save that. Load, and that looks like what we just did. Yeah, it is exactly what we just did. But I'm going to go through here, change this. So I'm going to go back, use my hex bins again. Click on that. Yes, that looks great. Now I'm going to go through and I want to do this cool thing where I'm changing my base map. And you can, in Kepler, before I get here, let me show you, you can actually change your base maps from a dark base map to a light base map to a muted base map. I'm not going to, well, that's the light one. You can do the muted night, the dark. I actually do like the dark ones a lot, but I'm going to add my own style. I'm going to add that style, the Johnny Walker type style that I'd created called Mojave from Mapbox. And really all I need to do is I'm going to bring over my, let's see, here we go. I'm not going to bring over Johnny's, I'm going to bring over mine. By doing so, I just hit share. I'm going to copy my URL, head back over here, drop my URL into here. Once again, sorry for the speed. Maybe I'll be able to do this a little slower some other time when we have more time. I'm going to add my key. Nobody look. Everybody turn away. And add my style. And guess what? Nothing happens. I do have to refresh. So I'm going to go through and reload Kepler. I'm going to go through this for a second. I didn't lose anything. Hold tight. And just like that, you'll see Mojave come up and you see all those points. And I can zoom out and beautifully see Southern California with all of its, all these cool points. Maybe a little hard to see right now. So let's try some fun stuff. Let's actually change this up to a 3D view of California. And I usually don't like to go three-dimensional, but here it's just like it's so telling of the story of what's happening with these earthquakes. And yeah, there's Ridgecrest. And this is where all of these really, if you go through and you filter for just Ridgecrest, that's where all of those earthquakes are happening. Um, so it's really, really interesting and just a great story to be able to tell. And even with that, the underlying layer that really showing all the hillshade, you can see so much. You can actually see, the ridge lines here as you go through, and you see, there's a part of my chart. I'm like, hey, what's this big open space? Well, it's a lake. And what's that baseball diamond type shape? Well, I really don't know, but it doesn't seem to still get a lot of earthquake activity. Um, just brilliant stuff you can do. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to change my points. And once again, I'm going to do something I almost never do. I almost never go 3D, but I want to go 3D. And just because I want to see the magnitude of the earthquakes. And just by doing that, using Kepler, and now you can see just how easy it is to use Kepler. It really wasn't very hard. The prep, the data, whatever else, that took a little bit of time. But here, when you're going through, there's a great story here. Really, you see Ridgecrest is shaking continuously. I think it really, Southern California in general almost had an earthquake every single day of last year. It was incredible. The large Ridgecrest earthquake happened around July 6th, and there were so many aftershocks. Anyone who lived in this area probably felt it. I remember reaching out to friends in San Diego, just going, "Oh my gosh, are you guys okay?" And everyone was shaken and stirred. So yeah, yeah. So, but looking at this area here led me to go through and take a closer look and see what happened. And I literally did about 2 hours of YouTube research with well, some of the finest geologists out there. But I did learn a lot about the geology of Southern California and the plate tectonics and how the San Andreas plate was moving against the American plate. And it was brilliant. I also found a lot of conspiracy theories too, because this area right here is a military base. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories as to why this area is shaking. In reality, though, by looking at all the really just going through and listening to geology, all the geologists and great professors in their classes, they're essentially showing that Baja California is kind of ripping away from Mexico and moving upwards. And just by looking at this, you can kind of see where it's happening along the fault lines, moving up. But as this moves up, this area here kind of gets crunched, and this giant diamond, it's essentially what is getting crushed along the American plate. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. It's just so much fun to be able to look at this. I've gone through. I'm like, oh yeah, well, it's like all the marks are kind of hiding what's happening. So let me go through and just turn off the points here, and now I can kind of see what that terrain looks like. And literally have spent days just looking at these maps and wondering what's here, and wow, is this really? It's a naval air base, and they do munitions testing, which I imagine all these all these spots might be. But still, really, really cool. Really cool information, really fun, and that was pretty much Kepler in just a few minutes. So hopefully, if you've got the resources and the time, maybe you can actually do a little bit of research and go through and start using Kepler to kind of put together your own stories. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I missed. I think I got to just about everything I wanted to show. I can go for hours and hours, but thanks. I'm Cesar Pico, and after this, I'm going to go and take care of the dish situation in my kitchen. So, yeah, let me go back and see if there's any questions or anything. Oh, there we go. Okay, so Tomas is saying a couple of things. Yeah. Did you happen to see anything?
I don't see anything. All right, I was talking on. All right, so I recorded the session, and I'm going to try to gather up everyone's documents, and I'll post something on Twitter once I have a link or a video to share. But otherwise, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the presenters; those were all really great. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks all.